obviously, this goes back to the Mind Twin thing, because we were talking about Assassin's Creed Syndicate the other day, and I had to laugh when I read Yori's response that Syndicate was the one that made her stop playing. I kind of feel the same way. Syndicate would be the game that would stop me playing from other. I'm so frustrated with Syndicate.
So tell me
I
about the
was
plot of Syndicate, because I haven't played it.
You haven't played any of the Assassin's Creed games, to be
I've
fair.
played some of them. I played Origins,
You played
and
Origins?
I played Black Flag, and I played Valhalla.
Okay.
Those are the 3 I've played.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Syndicate takes place during mostly the 1860s in London, near Whitechapel. Although I've actually been looking at a map, they don't even have Whitechapel in the same location as is really in England. And I wonder if that's just because that was a failure on Assassin's Creed part, or if Whitechapel actually was in a different district at one point in history. But they've got Whitechapel listed north of the Thames. It's actually east of. It's the east side of London, where they've got it kind of on the north side in the game.
And usually they're very strict with the locations. Like Rome on the Assassin's Creed
Brotherhood.
Brotherhood and everything was spot on. Like everything was where it was back then, and where it stands now.
I think all of us have a different kind of take on what the Assassins and their creed actually stands for. Halo said something along the lines of it sounding like it was Marxist and anarchist-ish. But I kind of think that it was never about anarchy or anti anything. It was free market and freedom of everything. That's not necessarily anarchy, because even in the Assassin's Creed, if you look at the very first game, there was definitely a hierarchy. Al-Mualim was the mentor.
Mentor for Altair.
And there were
So.
ranks. There were absolutely ranks in the Assassin's
Mm-hmm.
Order. So there was a hierarchy with a leader and subordinates. And that would have represented a type of government similar to a democracy, where it's led by the people for the people, instead of just I think that they were trying to have something like that set into place. But
Yeah.
if you play Brotherhood, for example, when they step into Rome, you have Ezio talking to Machiavelli, where he says, we need to give this city back to its people. And you have Ezio dedicating his time to fighting off Borgia captains in certain zones of the town in order to be able to purchase and reopen the various shops of the town. Basically trying to return capitalism to having an economic system where you can buy upgrades and art and all this other stuff. So it was definitely some kind of a capitalist economy that was trying to be put into place in Ezio's time.
And when did so when you're talking about Ezio, which game are you talking about? Is that Syndicate?
That was Brotherhood.
That was Brotherhood.
Brotherhood, okay.
Because it doesn't start on number 2 for.
But when did Brotherhood come out?
Brotherhood came out in 2010.
2010.
Okay. Yeah, because the reason I'm asking is I think that the underlying kind of political messages in the game may be very much affected by what was going on in the period of time that they actually came out and were designed. Well, so if it came out in 2010, then it was like made in 2009.
Well, here's the thing. Syndicate came out in 2015. In Syndicate, there are some side missions where you pair up with Karl Marx. Immediately that set off red flag bells in my head. I'm just like, why are we working with Marx? He's a complete anarchist. he even has you doing things that really kind of frustrated me. There was an anarchy quest in Syndicate that you have to do where you're not even against Templars, which already strikes me as odd because the assassins only ever attacked Templars
Templars.
and people who were actively trying to oppress the civilians and citizens.
Mm-hmm.
So pairing up with Marxist to go and set fire to some things in a building just to steal some, I don't know, paperwork for Marx does not seem like something that the assassins would have endeavored in.
But here's the thing, though, like, there have been plenty of times in histories where we, as a democratic world, have partnered with socialists in order to achieve an agenda. Russians were allies during World War II. The Jews in Auschwitz were rescued by Russians who were fighting Nazis.
And the whole Assassin's Creed storyline, like including Odyssey and the new ones, are the basically the present game, right?
1868, I think they were. I mean, if you put aside the modern aspects of each of these games outside of the Animus or Helix,
Yeah. So it could be like they didn't explain like that well what changed between the oh no, Connor would be the newest one, right?
no, he was 1770s.
Oh, ugh,
He was
good. I hate
he was
Connor.
the American Revolutionary one.
Oh yeah. Oh, I hated that one. But okay, so
Me
I
too.
still hate that one.
Me
Like,
too. Oh, absolutely. He is the worst assassin. Oh my god. But
hmm
but I didn't really like the fact that they had our assassins working with Karl Marx. And then there's another aspect of Syndicate that really drove me absolutely nuts. There's this one
bonkers.
where you work with Charles Dickens and um
Yeah, what was that? I don't like it's been so long since I played it. I now that you mentioned Carl Dickens, I kind of remember there was something to do with him,
he did one.
but
There was this one section, this one, or I think it was two different missions, right? The first one, you find out, you have to do a little bit of investigation into finding out why people are stealing things when they normally wouldn't steal and why they don't remember it. And then you go and investigate, and your assassin gets hypnotized and forced into stealing from people.
that's
Dude,
so
dude,
ridiculous.
first and foremost, hypnotism does not work in real life the way that it works in movies and media. I can tell you right now it does not because I in two different high schools we had hypnotists come through. And I watched as people, behaved like chickens and stuff, funny stuff on stage. But when they tried to actually put me through the hypnotism, it didn't work. And what the hypnotist said to try and push to try and talk to the people, he said if that certain people are not susceptible to hypnotism. And his hypnotism was not just grabbing a big old silver watch and waving it in front of your eyes and then you're hypnotized.
hmm
And that is how they worked in Syndicate. Basically, your assassin stands there, the hypnotist waves a big shiny watch in your face, and then suddenly says, "You're getting very tired. This was a mistake. You're going to do something for me." And it doesn't take that much effort to get an assassin hypnotized. So, my first problem with that, like I said, is that's just not how it works. I've always been under the assumption that if you have a very strong willed mind, where you are a free thinker, very independent, you are not going to be very susceptible to hypnotism. And if anything, the assassins are free thinkers and very strong of mind so that they don't sway over to the Templars and their ideology. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I I'm just not buying the fact that one of my assassins could so easily succumb to being hypnotized. And then what made that mission even worse is, okay, so my character wakes up in the jail cell. I have to get released by somebody. And then when you go up and actually face him, if you don't do it stealthily, he'll hypnotize you away. You'll restart the mission over a certain amount of feet away from the hypnotist, and you have to get him stealthy like. Like, even though you know at this point, even though your assassin knows he's a hypnotist, you can't face up off of him right in front of him. You have to come up from behind. And that just really just pushes past my limit for what I can believe.
I mean, you can just do like an arrow and boom, there you go.
Well, you have to bring him back alive.
Oh, that's
okay.
No wonder.
So this is just like super funny to me that you're getting upset. You're getting upset over the accuracy of the hypnotism in the game, because I'm sitting here thinking like, this is all made up. Hypnotism is not real. So are you getting upset on the way he does hypnotism?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I do believe that some hypnotism can be real. You can sway certain people to do things, but you can't really sway a person with hypnotism to do something that would not otherwise be in their nature to do. You can't. Like, I would not be able to sway somebody with hypnotism to get them to commit murder or theft unless they were predisposed to the notion that that would be acceptable for them. So I don't. That's why I find it so unbelievable, because it's not. It doesn't work that way. That's why I'm upset with that concept. Even if hypnotism is real, it doesn't work that way, and not against somebody who is that independent of mind. You know what I mean?
Tons of things in Assassin's Creed that aren't real. Like the Animus is not real. You can't really like go back and relive someone's lives through their DNA.
Yeah, I know that, but there's this thing called suspension of disbelief. You know, what is it that we can believe, and what is it that would push past our limitation of what we can believe? You know what I mean?
Is there something in the internal world of Assassin's Creed that the idea of hypnotism breaks? I guess your thinking is like it breaks the internal rules of the world, because assassins are supposed to be kind of free thinkers, and free thinkers.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
There's a lot that I mean, I know that magic doesn't exist, but I can read the Harry Potter books and believe that in that world that magic exists. I don't necessarily believe that kind of magic exists. I know that the Animus isn't a thing, but even within the confines of that world, I just find it difficult to believe that an assassin who was raised to do certain things, to assess certain ways, to okay, and then let me point this out for frame of reference, for context. In the same game, they have you working with a child version of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to solve actual mysteries. So like you have to be able to so you have to be able to go to these different crime scenes, analyze all of the clues, talk to all of the suspects, and be able to figure out who did it. So even if you're taught how to think or what to think, this would show that you're a free thinker and have to sometimes think outside the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have that game mechanism or that game mechanic in our fictional world, let's say hypothetically we have the Animus, we have the ability for some people to have eagle vision, all of this stuff exists, hypothetically. It seems rather contradictory for, on one hand, your assassin to be investigating crime scenes and figuring out who done it, and then in the same breath, in the same game, have the same assassin being hypnotized into committing theft. It breaks the immersion, because you're supposed to believe one thing about the assassin only to be told this happened to them.
You weren't signing up to play like a Batman game.
No. And even Batman, if you look at the Batman Arkham games, the Mad Hatter had to use a drug on Batman in order to get him susceptible to stuff. And even then, he fought through it and beat the crap out of the Mad Hatter.
Yeah, but it's because Bruce has been training his mind and everything, so that's why he doesn't get as affected by even the fear toxins from Scarecrow.
But I would imagine the same thing to be said of the assassins. They go through how many years of
Mm-hmm.
training?
Exactly, they should, because I mean, according to Desmond's, he said so that his father wanted him to be into the assassins, training when he was younger. It's just that he left. He basically just said, "Screw this," and he abandoned his father, and that's why he got caught by the
Templars. Abstergo.
Templars. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it breaks the immersion to have all these different concepts happening in one game, and then you're expecting us to believe that as a 9-year-old child, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was already investigating crimes.
It's almost like they wanted to have Sir Arthur Conan Doyle as a cameo, and they're like, "Oh crap, he's only 9 years old when this game."
In this era, he's 9 years old, but we need to give him a reason to freaking write Sherlock Holmes. So let's do this.
Yeah, so he's like 9-10 years old at the time that this game starts playing out. They have you working with a lot of different people. They have you work with Charles Dickens. They have you work with Aberline, who later investigated the Jack the Ripper stuff. They have you working with Karl Marx. All these big names of people that existed during that time frame. And in order to shoehorn Jack the Ripper in, they do it as a DLC for 30 years later. I'm just like thinking, yeah, there's a DLC for Jack the Ripper, which didn't happen until like the 1890s.
Yeah, I saw that. I was just looking it up on Wikipedia. It's like Jack the Ripper.
I guess they tried so hard, because I mean, I love it when in Assassin's Creed 2 they show you Leonardo da Vinci. It was like natural, and I kind of like, okay, this is Leonardo da Vinci, and then he appears again in Brotherhood, where he was in Rome at the time, so it was kind of like nice and planned. But I guess on here is like, let's just put as many famous people that people can.
Yeah, and they went really all out with that, which kind of pushes my suspension of disbelief. They really went all out with having you investigate crimes, which, if you were a Marxist and therefore an anarchist, why would you investigate crimes? So you're investigating crimes, working with Karl Marx, working with Charles Dickens, and getting hypnotized. Like, all of this stuff just kind of rolls around in my head and makes me wonder, what the hell am I on to be playing this game? And then
I never finished it, so I was like,
And then the game-breaking glitches, well, they're not necessarily game-breaking, but oh my god, Syndicate absolutely sucks on this one. I get on the carriage, and you guys have seen it, where I just barely hit another carriage and somebody goes flying.
Yeah.
Or I just get off the carriage, or I'm running towards a carriage, and I've seen 3 or 4 times where just some random carriage just goes flying in the air with 1 or possibly 2 horses, okay?
Yeah, like flipping over like it's like freaking Fast and the Furious.
This is like Grand Theft Carriage, man. I swear to God.
Grand Theft Carriage.
It's that bad. But like, okay, so this is the rage-inducing moment that made me actually rage quit a game for the first time in like 3 years, okay? So right now they have 2 different types of missions you can do for carriage escort or carriage hijacking. In carriage escort, you have to help your allies get this carriage from point A to point B. In carriage hijack, you have to take the carriage from your opponents from point A to point B. I hate it so much. I hate it so much. So I get on the buggy. Now, if you don't do it right, if there are 2 people on the carriage and you try to hijack it from the ground, the other one of them will shove you off the carriage, and they'll take off as fast as they can, and unless you get another carriage, you can't catch them. So you have to get on the back of the carriage first, and then shoot one and hijack it from the other, in order to even get a leg up on it. But by the time that you've shot one, every other carriage around you that has your enemies on it already know that you're now trying to hijack the carriage.
Right.
So everybody's on your ass like flies to poop. So I sit down on the carriage. And as I'm trying to get this thing going, because I've got like a barricade of stuff in front of me, I'm not moving fast at all. Some other schmuck climbs up onto the top of the carriage. And I try and get them off by swinging the carriage around, hitting walls. No, what they do is they stand there perfectly still until they come up on me, grab my happy ass, throw me off the carriage, get down into the carriage before I can even get back up on it, and they're gone. And all I'm left with...
It has like no effect on them whatsoever.
It has no effect on them. And I'm left just standing there with all of these other bad guys now trying to kill me, and I'm trying to get away, and I suddenly can't. Even using a zip line to get up on top of a building. Left there wondering what the hell just happened. I'm like, nope, I quit the game. Why wouldn't they add a mechanic that allows you to throw others who are trying to get you out of the carriage off of the carriage? Because here's why this upsets me so much. They had that game mechanic in Assassin's Creed 2, released in 2009. They had this game mechanic in a game released 6 years prior. In Assassin's Creed 2, there's a part in the game where you're trying to escort Leonardo to Forli from Firenze. And you have to go through the mountains. And in order to get these guys off your carriage, you have to try and aim the carriage to the point where they can't keep their balance. In 2009, you could throw people off of the carriage. And this is a 2015 game where you can't throw anybody off the carriage.
Oh wow! Not even doing the motions, like moving the carriage around. It doesn't work.
There's a ramming mechanism in this game where you can ram your carriage into stuff. I rammed this carriage into walls, and I rammed this carriage into other carriages, and this person stayed perfectly aligned with the top of my carriage, and then grabbed me, yanked me off of it, and they were gone.
The yearly release cycle that Ubisoft has for these games now, where it's like every year these games are huge, and every year they're turning out a new one, and the cost of that is just like maybe good physics inside of the game.
I don't even know. I don't even know.
I was wondering about that because I noticed like all the Ubisoft games have a formula. Like basically, if you played Assassin's Creed, you played Far Cry or any of their other games, Mad Max, they all kind of have the same formula to them. There are bases that you attack, and then there's like vehicles you can hijack. And then there's like usually like chests and stuff to go unlock. They all have they're all pretty much the same game.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty much.
Yeah, I think that AC2, AC2, Brotherhood, and Revelations, I think they were probably all done on the same engine. You said something about how they were released 2000 on a yearly basis. I think that's because whoever was developing 2, I think they already had the entire story lined up as to what they wanted to do. They just needed to fix it on the engine because Assassin's Creed, the first one, came out on 2007. Assassin's Creed 2 wasn't released until 2009. Brotherhood was 2010, and Revelations was 2011. And then you had 3, which was released, I think, in 2012. And then Rogue, another game that I'm not gonna play.
By mistake, and I was like, "Wait, what's going on here?" And I didn't even know what it was about until after I started playing. I got it, and I started playing. I'm like, "Wait a second, am I a temp?" So yeah,
Like from an Assassin's Creed game that you didn't even recognize what you're playing.
Well, okay,
exactly.
Revo and I have just been recently watching other people play certain games. We've been watching Let's Plays. And a guy named Tetra Ninja played Assassin's Creed 3. And when we were playing as Hatham Kenway, he's like, "Where's Connor? Why am I not playing as Connor?" And then all of a sudden, we find out the reveal that Hatham was a Templar, and his first reaction was, "What the?" He could not
Yeah.
believe that
Okay.
he just got punked into playing as a Templar.
Yeah.
And
So
here's huh?
they set it up so the entire game you think you're playing an assassin, and then you
No.
find out you're playing a Templar.
No, no,
Not
it's
the
like
entire, like the first, like the introductory chapter.
Oh, okay.
Like,
I was
just
about to say,
like
I'd be pretty mad.
just
yeah,
the
like
introductory.
basically how Connor came to be, basically.
Yeah, and then Connor comes in and he's the assassin, and I think he was the weakest. Not physically weak. He was absolutely brutal. I mean, there's a lot of blood that you don't see in previous installments. But as far as his mindset, his constant naivete, just everything about him just rubbed me the wrong way. But
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag came out to do Edward Kenway.
Justice.
Now, the reason why you know of Edward but not really of Hatham or Connor is because Hatham is Edward's son, Halo, and Connor is Edward's grandson.
Grandson.
Okay.
So you played as you said you played Black Flag. You played
Mhm.
as the grandfather to the assassin from AC3.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. I
So
didn't beat Black Flag, so I don't have the. I got frustrated with it, so I did play it, but
what
I
did you
didn't
get
beat
frustrated
it.
with?
I kept getting into areas that were much too high level for me, and then I couldn't get out of them. And so then the only option was to go back if I was lucky enough to have a previous save, to go back to a previous save, or I was just screwed. And so I finally just got into an area I got stuck in. I was like, I am not going back and starting this game all over again because I got stuck in too high of an area. So I just stopped playing.
If you were to give it another chance, I'd say it happens. It mostly what you're describing is just the first player syndrome. The first attempt syndrome, where you're not prepared for what those entail. The game wouldn't let you go somewhere if you didn't have the right equipment to be able to handle it.
So maybe it's the open world mechanic. That's the difference with that one. It's
No, not
such an
completely.
open world.
It's not even that much of an open world. There are still some places that you cannot go until after you get through a certain sequence.
It was open world enough to where I would get into areas where I was not prepared to be in them.
Well, I think
especially on the ship.
And this is why I say, first attempt syndrome, because I fully feel what you're saying from what my first attempt was. But the last time I just went back through it and replayed, just last month, I was going to places where honestly I probably shouldn't have been going, and I was able to do it, but only because I've already played the game enough times to know how to strategize those areas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Maybe.
if you play the game enough and you know the game like the back of your hand, you know how to strategize. I got desynced on a ship only once in the last one, and I was taking on ships that were in the red zone for me that I probably shouldn't have been taking on. But it's because I knew how to work the mortars, I knew how to avoid certain cannon fodder, and I also knew how to utilize the smaller other ships that accompanied those really quickly. So, like, one strategy is, let's say you're up against a brig, a frigate, and a schooner. If you take over the schooner, you can use that to repair your ship, and then go back after the other ones that are around you. So, like, if you take enough damage, take down the schooner, board it, take that as a repair, and then go back at the bigger ships until you've got only one ship remaining that you can outmaneuver.
Right.
So those are things that you wouldn't necessarily know on a first playthrough.
Yeah, I don't know. So see, I guess that's part of my problem. I only play games once. generally.
Yeah.
So if it's going to take me 2 or 3 times to get good at it, I'm probably not going to play it.
I would say if you get a chance, try it over and then just stick to the areas for now that you know you're equipped to do. But like
Yeah.
if for example, something that you would want to do is in the area, like let's say around Havana, because of the fact that you don't want to go off into an area that's too high level for you, take on many more battles with the lower level ships around Havana. Because the more that you take on from smaller level ships, the more income you make, the more materials you take on, and the more upgrades you can buy early on to put you into a higher level that can take on the other areas. So that's what I would recommend if you were to ever give AC4 another chance. As far as going back into Syndicate, though, like AC4 was a far better game than Syndicate on a lot of levels, not to mention the fewer glitches. I'm still playing AC Syndicate. I'm probably going to go back to it because I want to finish it. I want to know what the story is. I'm trying to push myself towards Origins and Odyssey and then Valhalla. But so far, I'm really not impressed with a lot of the different aspects of Syndicate. Now, that's not to say it's not all bad. I like the fact that in AC Syndicate, you can swap between the two twins. Because your assassins are Jacob and Evie Fry. So, it's not just one assassin. You go into the
Mm.
start menu, and then you can swap to Evie or swap to Jacob. And that was
I think,
something that I'd never seen in an Assassin's Creed game before.
but I think it's because of the whole let's begin to add female into the, as protagonists, and then you start choosing if you're were born male or female in the later versions, right? Like I think Valhalla is like that. Is Odyssey like
Yeah,
that?
Odyssey was the first one I remember doing that. I didn't realize they did it all the way back in Syndicate.
What did they do in Odyssey?
They let you pick if you're born as a male or a female.
Huh. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't be the first game of its time to do stuff like that. I mean, look at Mass Effect. Mass Effect, you created your own character, and they had two different voice actors for whatever character you chose,
Like
male or
Fallout 4
female
too.
Shepherd. But and
Okay,
I'm
can I rant about this a little bit since we're talking about the female a male thing in Assassin's Creed, because I have a little rant about this.
alrighty.
Uh,
Segue to
All
the next
right.
thing. What are we talking about?
I was really really pissed off because I only play games once. I was really really pissed off to find out the canonical playthrough for Assassin's Creed Valhalla was a female Viking, because all of the marketing had this big hunky male Viking on it. And then I get to the game and I have to pick a sex. I'm like, well, I want to do the canonical playthrough because I want
Yes.
it to be what it was supposed to be. And come to find out, it's the female Viking.
Oh,
And I was
great.
so pissed off about that.
That is so annoying when they do that thing with the marketing. Like, I'd rather play the game as canon as possible. Like, let's stay with that. But
well,
no.
Well, why don't they do it canonical? Like, why did they have something that was even canonical? Like, okay, let's go back to Mass Effect, for example. It doesn't matter whether you played as a male or a female Shepard. It was still canon, no matter how it was, because they never said Shepard by name in any of it. They just called it Commander Shepard.
Tell you why it's the canon the sex matters for being canonical, but if you're gonna play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, that might spoil it. So I don't know if I want to do that.
No,
But
don't. No, no.
there is a reason if you play through it that the female character is canonical. And
Well,
I even talked to someone who comes to my streams who worked at Ubisoft at the time the game came out, and he said that they were looking for a particular story. They wanted a story about a Viking who went to England and created a settlement. And the only Viking they could find who did something like this, because that's not what Vikings did, was a female Viking. And that's why the canonical playthrough is a female Viking.
Well, why did? But okay, so you say that there's a reason why they did it, and then you obviously, because we said don't tell us the spoilers, but
The
that's
spoiler,
because.
but that was their reasoning behind. I mean, the spoiler's different, but that was the reasoning behind it.
Well, that kind of reminds me of the original Resident Evil, where you could play as Jill or as Chris, and then you find out that the canonical one was Chris's playthrough.
Right. But did they market it?
No.
With Jill?
No,
they marketed Assassin's Creed Valhalla with the male version of Eivor.
You got punked. You got
punked. Yeah. That was the thing that really made me mad. It wasn't that they decided that. Well, I mean, I kind of think it's ridiculous because, like, I don't really think female Vikings were a thing. But what really made me mad was that they marketed it as with the male version of Eivor on all of the marketing. So I get to the game and find out that, oh no, the male that they were marketing it with is not the canonical playthrough.
Wow. See, why didn't they do it the way that they did it with Syndicate then? Because Syndicate, what they do as far as story is the cutscenes have both siblings in the cutscenes. Okay?
Exactly.
The entire story is about both of them. And there are some scenes in the game, there are some sections. Now, there are some differences between them. I'll get to that. There are a few missions where you need to take over as Jacob, and there are a few missions where you need to take over as Evie. But for the majority of it, you play who you want to play. When you this was the first Assassin's Creed that actually began its own role play, like a RPG style game, where you leveled up and you had to apply skill points. So in this one, in Syndicate, when you put your skill points to it, you put Jacob has 3 different skills that Evie does not have, and Evie has 3 different skills you can apply points to that Jacob does not have. So there are definitely perks to switching between one and the other for certain aspects of the game. When it came to the brawling missions, I always preferred to play as Jacob because it just makes more sense for him to be the fighter rather than have Evie fighting these big old brutes in the ring, in like the wrestling boxing ring. The cutscenes take place around both of them, and you don't feel like you're having to choose one that's not the canon because they're both the canon.
That's a cool idea.
I
don't know why they didn't do it that way.
They could have done that with Valhalla.
I think it would have been hard with the storyline. Maybe they could have written it differently to make it that way, but with the storyline, it wouldn't work. There was really only, with the storyline that they had, there was really only one way it could be canon. But they certainly could have changed the way they wrote the story.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always what it is the story happens because somebody wrote it that way.
Yeah. So they could have changed the way they wrote the story. Because the reason that the female, like I told you the reasoning behind, like they wanted a Viking who came to England and like created a settlement. And the only Viking they could find who did that in the time period they were looking at was this female Viking. So they had to make her the canon story. But then they wrote the story in a way that only there could only be one canon character. So that had nothing to do with any of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they certainly could have written it in a different way, but they could have, marketed it. Like, do a Google search for like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and look at the marketing. Like,
Yeah.
look at the images for it.
It's all
And
male driven.
it's all male driven. Like they thought that, I guess they thought that if they marketed it with the female version of the Viking, no one would buy it, I guess. Because you know how much guys hate strong, independent women in their video games.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a conversation.
but I don't like. I guess guys won't buy it if there's a female character is the
Which is
lead.
such a cop out because you know what? Aliens wouldn't be aliens without Ellen Ripley.
Guys love well written women in their games and in their media.
But they have to be
There's
well written.
Yeah, that's the key. They
Yeah.
have to be well written. And maybe they were worried that the female version of Eivor was not well written enough. By the way, Eivor is a female name. So when you're playing the male character, you're just playing a guy who has a girl's name.
That's like a boy named Sue.
Yeah. Yeah. It's basically like having a male character named Sue or Sally or something, which is kind of ridiculous. They don't even change the name. Like it was really like they just shoved the male character into the game so that they could give guys an option to play a male character.
Yeah, pretty much.
So-
I don't know. Ubisoft has been going down some strange paths with their games for a while now.